Hello, math students. Today, we're going to do something different. Now that we know how to find the volume of a cylinder or a cone, we're going to take it one step farther. Today, I'm going to be giving you the volume, and one of the other numbers is going to be missing. So we're going to have to use what we know about solving equations and using formulas to be able to find a height or a radius or even a diameter in some of these shapes. So in this problem, I want to find the height of the cylinder. And we've talked about a cylinder that looks like this before. I know the height, usually you're thinking about going up and down. It's the distance between the two circle bases. So it's labeled with the H right there. One issue with this is that they're telling me the diameter. So I need to know that the radius of this is only half of the diameter, which is going to be 5 inches. And I know my volume, I think the cubic got cut off on my screen a little bit there. That should be 314 cubic inches. So I am going to start by putting in all the stuff I know. This time I happen to know the volume, so I can put that in place of the V. I know that the radius is 5. I know pi is going to be in there. I don't know the height. So when I'm doing this, when I simplify here, I can do that 5 squared. And usually we put the number in front of pi. I haven't mentioned that before, but we've seen that already, where we kind of put the pi after the number. So I changed that pi times 5 squared into 25 pi. But now think about how I would solve an equation. Right now that h, what I want is being multiplied by some stuff. To get rid of multiplying, we have to divide. Here is the problem that some students, if they're not paying attention right now, are going to run into some troubles, because they're going to just take that 314 and they're going to say divide by 25 pi. And your calculator, thinking that it's all smart, is going to mess you up, because it's going to divide by 25 and then it's going to multiply that answer by pi, because it's trying to do order of operations. So when you type this into your calculator, showing the work for this, I would still show, and I'm going to have to really write small, 25 pi underneath each of these, because we show our work when we solve equations. But you're going to do this in 2 separate division steps on your calculator. So please have your calculator handy right now. Do 314, divide by 25, hit equals, and then divide by pi. Okay, if you did that correctly, it'll round to be about 4. The answer that I got was 3.9979, blah, blah, blah. It's going to keep on going. This is the spot I worry about. That is going to make it round up. So that's going to be 4.0, or about 4 inches. When we're doing this, instead of rounding to the nearest 10th, like we do for volume, or sometimes we even go to the nearest 100th, when we're measuring the dimensions that we're trying to find, usually we're going to have whole numbers. So if you're getting something that's not really close to a whole number, like this was really close to 4, if you don't get that, you might have an issue with your problem. Okay, in this one, this is a cone now. Cones, again, have that 1/3 in there. That can throw things off a little bit if you're not careful, and showing your work on paper will help you, I promise. So I know that the formula is up there, 1/3 area of the circle times the height. I know the radius. And this time they are nice, they gave us the radius. I'm still looking for the height. And I know the volume is 956 cubic feet. So I can put all that stuff in there that I know. Now here's the thing, when it says simplify, you don't necessarily have to do it exactly the same way. And I'm going to show you a different way to do this also. But I would hope that you know 9 squared, that's really 81, right? If I would do 81 and then either multiply by 1/3 or divide by 3. 81 divided by 3 is 27. I don't truly care if you write down that step right there or not. I think it looks kind of nice to be able to see how we can clean this up. But now my next step is still going to be, I need to get rid of multiplying the h by some stuff. So I'm going to divide by that stuff, 27 pi. And again, hopefully you've got your calculator handy. 2 separate divisions, please. 956 divided by 27, hit equals, and then divide by pi. I have 11.27 something, so that would round to be 11.3. Now, I did say on the last slide, if you get something that doesn't get close to a whole number, there's probably an issue. I was talking more about the worksheet. I forgot about this problem. Today's worksheet, all of your answers should round nicely to whole numbers, but this would be about 11.3 feet. Now, if you made a mistake on this, if you had that 956 and then you divided by the 27 and then just said 27 pi, your answer is going to be much bigger. It's over 100, which wouldn't even make sense now that the picture has to be drawn to scale, but you have to be careful about that. Here's the other way that I wanted to show you for how to solve this. And I know this is going to get a little bit crowded here. So maybe I'll show it down here in this blank space. What we have is 956 equals 1/3 pi times 9 squared times the h, right? Sometimes I like to just get rid of the fraction. How do I get rid of multiplying by a fraction? Because I don't divide by fractions. I would multiply by the reciprocal, which would be 3 or 3/1, right? If I would multiply this side by 3/1 and this side by 3, this just takes that out. So I would have 956 times 3 is now 2868. And then I could do that 9 squared and say 81 pi h. And then I would divide by the 81 and by the pi. Now I can write it in one step. On my calculator, I'm going to have to say divide by 81, hit equals, divide by pi, hit equals. And I still get that 11.27, blah, 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 which would be about 11.3. These problems go, again, one more step in difficulty, because now I'm trying to find the radius. And you can see I even wrote in here, you're going to need to use a square root so that I can get rid of the square. And we haven't done that yet. But again, knowing that I'm going to give you pretty nice numbers means that we can find some decent answers here that you probably will be able to do in your head near the end. So, volume of a cylinder, pi r squared h. I've said this every lesson so far. Please start by writing down your formula. If you don't, you will most likely forget about the 1/3 at times with the cones or something like that. So just be careful here. The volume I know is 226.2. I'm not going to bother writing in any labels during my problem. I just put labels at the end. There's my pi. My radius, I don't know, but the height I do. So right now, the r squared, can't get rid of the square right now. That's going to be the very last thing to do. I have to get rid of multiplying by the pi and by the h. So I'm going to show that. So let's get rid of, I usually write the number first and then the pi. But again, 2 steps on your calculator, right? 226.2 divided by 8, hit equals, and then divided by pi, hit equals. This is almost exactly, it's 9.00021, very small. 9 is about what r squared is. Okay, before I even show you the work for this, can you think of a number that you could square, multiply by itself, and get 9? Well, I'm guessing that you know that answer is 3. Here's how we show the work. To get rid of a square, I use something called a square root. Because we aren't doing the chapters in order this year, we would have normally seen square roots before. But again, I think that you probably can undo a square in your head, or there is a square root button on your calculator that we can use. And my radius is going to be 3. And the label on this will be meters. In the next one, in the cone problem, I'm actually going to erase this and do my work here in the middle because there just isn't very much space on the side. For my cone, the volume is going to be 1/3 pi r squared h. So I've got a volume of 314.2. I don't know my r, but my height is 12. Okay, I'm going to show you another trick. I've shown you how to just get rid of the 1/3. And we've also talked about simplifying things. I am absolutely going to simplify this one. This 1/3 that's right here and the 12 that's right here, I could just multiply that. What is 1/3 of 12, or 12 divided by 3? That's just a 4. So those two numbers go together. That just makes a 4. I still have my pi r squared. Now, if that does not seem comfortable for you, if you don't like that, you can take it in separate steps. You could multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of the 1/3, and then you could divide both sides by 12. But I promise it's doing the same thing. So right now, I'm going to divide by the 4 and by the pi, 2 separate steps. Please do that in your calculator. 314.2 divided by 4, hit equals, divide by pi, hit equals. This is almost exactly, again, rounding, it's going to be 25. So again, I told you I was going to give you nice numbers, right? What number times itself gives you 25? It's going to be 5. The work is show a square root here and a square root here. We just have to do the same thing on both sides. And then my r equals 5. And my label on this was kilometers. That would be a ginormous cone if the radius was 5 kilometers and the height was 12 kilometers. That's a lot. Okay, for these last problems, I have to be careful here because in the cylinder, they're giving me the diameter. I don't have any decent problems in this presentation, I'm just realizing right now, where you have to find a diameter. But if you had to find a radius, then you would be able to, let me go back a slide. If you had to find a radius and we knew that this radius was 5, for instance, you would be able to know that then the full diameter would be 10 kilometers. So if they ask for a diameter, you know you have to double that. Okay, so one more cylinder. I know my volume. Here we've got V equals pi r squared h. So 176 equals pi times, now the diameter is 8 centimeters. That means that the radius is 4 centimeters. So 4 squared times the height. Okay, 4 squared is 16. If I would kind of clean this up, oops, I should write my 16 first. This would be, I just did the same thing twice, 16 pi times h. Okay, and that's the way that we should probably say you should write this. To be perfectly honest, if I was solving this problem on my own, I would know that 4 squared is 16. I would just say, I'm going to divide by 16 and divide by pi, because the 16 takes out the 4 squared. Gone. The pi takes out that pi, so there's my height. That's what I'm looking for. So 176 divide by 16 equals, and then divide by pi equals. This one is about 3.5 when we round. Not as nice as the answers that you'll see on the worksheet today, but this would be 3.5 centimeters. And we've got one more that's a cone. I know the radius, I don't know the height again, but I know the volume. So we're going to have that volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So 7,200 equals 1/3 pi 15 squared, and I'm looking for the height. Okay, 15 squared, if you don't know that number, we will be memorizing that number later. That's 225. So this one I'm going to take an extra step. I'm going to say 7,200 equals 1/3 pi 225 times h. Okay, you can either simplify the 1/3 with the 225. You can certainly do that. 225 does divide nicely by 3, and that would be 75. So I'd have 75 pi times h. That gives me 2 extra lines of work. You can do it that way. Or I'm going to go back and do this problem the way that I showed you one earlier. I'm going to get rid of the 1/3. Instead of multiplying by 1/3 here or trying to get rid of it later, I could just multiply this side by 3/1 and multiply this side by 3/1, or just 3. That just takes out that fraction part. Okay, I'm going to stick with the blue here. So 7,200 times 3 is going to be 21600. We just figured out that 15 squared is 225. There's my pi and my h. So now I'm going to divide by 225 pi in 2 separate steps. So 21,600 divided by 225 and then divide by pi. And I have that my height is, rounding to 30.6. It's really 30.5577, blah, blah, blah. So when I round that, that's going to round up to a 6, so 30.6 yards. So today, you've got a worksheet. However, there's quite a few problems on there. So I'm going to say just do the evens on the worksheet today. The answer key is in Schoology. Check your answers. Be careful about things like finding a diameter or taking a square root to get a radius. When you're done with that, make sure that you take the knowledge check in Schoology. If you have any questions, let me know.